Hi everyone, my name's Dominic Gawley. I'm a consultant with Human Synergistics Australia. Some of you might recognize my voice as the host of our Culture Bites podcast. If you're one of our listeners, thank you very much. If you're not, then make sure you check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Today, it's my pleasure to have on Phocas Software, who have been doing some tremendous work in the culture space. So today I'm joined by Myles Glashier, who's the co-founder and CEO of Phocas Software, as well as Karen Hailwood, the Chief People Officer. Karen, how are you doing?
I'm great, Dom. How are you?
I'm very well. I can't see Myles at the moment, but I'm sure he'll join us any minute.
Yeah, our line just fell out. I've just rejoined.
Oh, okay. It's always the way. It's the irony with a tech company as well. I love it.
I know. I don't think he's run away. I'm pretty sure. Oh, there he is. Okay. He's back.
We've got him here. Hi, Myles. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Hi, Dom. How you doing today?
Yeah, doing really well. Now, before we get going, I hear a bit of a rumor that in the office, Myles, you're known as Marvelous Myles. Is this true?
This is true. I am known as Marvelous from time to time.
I love it. But Karen, I haven't heard a rumor of what your moniker might be.
No, I have been called many things in my life, Dom, but most of them I probably can't share at the conference, but I don't have a regular one in the office.
I'll tell you what then, I'll put out the challenge to our audience to come up with a moniker to match Marvelous Myles. We need something for Karen. So maybe in the chat, if you come up with your best suggestion, we'll tag her in it on our LinkedIn page at the end.
I'm going with Crazy Karen, Dom. Crazy Karen.
No crazy Karens. No crazy Karens. Speaking of chats, we're going to do it in a bit of just a kind of chat conversation style format with Phocas Software. If you have questions, then please send them through and we'll have some time at the end to go into them. Maybe just to start off, Myles, if I go to you first, as the co-founder and CEO, maybe not everyone's familiar with Phocas Software. So could you give us a little introduction? Who are Phocas Software? What do you do?
Yeah, sure. Dominic, can you see me now?
I can.
There we go. So that's us there, Phocas Software. You can see my kids actually have helped out with the presentation today. I was chatting with them last night and I was telling them I was going to a conference and there might be a couple of thousand people, and I explained that maybe I'll get questions about our company and the culture, and they thought, that sounds really boring, Dad. Can't we help out a little bit? So Tiger Lily helped with that one, and then Wolfgang helped out with that little one. Anyway, so what was the question again?
So it's a bit about who are Phocas Software. What do you?
Yeah, sure. So Phocas, Dom, is a data analytics software company. And many of you out there are probably thinking, well, that sounds interesting, but what the heck is that? So maybe if I explain our mission. Our mission is that we make people feel good about data. So if you think, particularly in this day and age, people are drowning, business people are drowning in a sea of data from their marketing systems, their accounting systems, their HR systems. And it's very difficult to make timely, accurate decisions and to feel in control of your business. So what we do is we save people from the trauma of spreadsheets and pretty charts. And we do that by putting all of their business data together in a really simple user interface so that they can make those decisions quickly and easily. Not just dashboards, but going from dashboards and drilling into the underlying data. We particularly help manufacturing, distribution, and retail companies. You'll know people, I guess, where's the audience today? New Zealand and Australia and Asia. So you'll know people like Systema, the big New Zealand plastic packaging company, Hoyts, the cinema chain, Repco, the automotive parts people, even the Australian Mint. So we help Australia print money, which is pretty cool. We're a global business. About 40% of our revenue comes from the United States, 30% from Europe, and the rest from here in Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. And I'm delighted to say, Dom, that we are growing. Even in the current times, we're finding in this age of data and a distributed workforce that people need access to timely, accurate data, and they can no longer stick with the status quo. So they're investing in their digital transformation. And we're about 184 employees, I think, Karen, and delighted to say that we're recruiting about 30 roles at the moment. So if you're a software engineer in Christchurch or digital marketing guru in Sydney, we'd love to hear from you. So am I allowed to do that, Dom?
You're absolutely allowed to do that, but you might get a flood of applications by the end of this presentation when we go through it.
Yeah, sorry, Karen.
Yeah, Karen's going to have to deal with them all. But that's great. And it's a great news story, right? And in these current times that we're still hiring. And speaking of trauma from spreadsheets, I definitely have some trauma from my past dealing with spreadsheets. So I related to that one. You know, Myles, you've obviously been invited to speak at this conference on culture. So I'd be interested, you know, how would you describe your culture today? What does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, culture, I guess, Dom, is something we're very, very passionate about. And I think the best way to describe the culture at Phocas is 3 words. And those 3 words are fun, fulfilling, forever. So if I just sort of digest those or break those down a bit, fun at Phocas, to people at Phocas, the fun tends to be the work itself is fun. I enjoy my job. On a Sunday night, I look forward to going to work on a Monday morning, you know, more often than not, at least. The fulfilling bit is more, is it professionally rewarding? Am I learning and developing? Do I have a meaningful role? And the forever bit, you know, that's an interesting one. For some people, it's literally, I want to be here forever. It's the best job I've ever had. I had one person recently say, you're going to have to carry me out of here in a box, which I guess if that works for us and them, it's great. But the forever bit for others, though, I think it's more about, you know, they're not going to be at Phocas forever, but hopefully the skills they've learned, the people they've met, the experiences they've had, that will be forever. And I think of some of our younger graduates that have started. I hope they're not with us in 20 years' time, but I'd be so proud to think they might be a CEO one day. And if they've taken some of what they've learned and this fun, fulfilling forever philosophy with them, wouldn't that be just be fantastic? So I think, you know, those 3 words, probably the culture was already like that. And I think that the 3 words reflect the values that we have. And I think what I think works about them is it's very simple. And it's also, people can interpret it in a way that's meaningful to them, but it still matches with the values that they have. So it works quite well.
I love that. And I love when you define fun, because I think a lot of people, especially with the tech companies, they tend to think of, you know, a lot of perks and, you know, foosball in the lunchroom and all that kind of stuff, the slide in the lobby, what have you. But from it sounds like the way you talk about fun is that you should have fun in the job you do, just in your role naturally should be fun and rewarding. So I love that. Myles, you know, I guess people are interested, you know, that sounds amazing. They're getting their resumes ready to send through already, but how did you get there? So what's kind of the history that led up to that?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up here where we both are in Sydney, Australia. I was a biotechnologist. I started biotechnology originally, but I was a terrible scientist. And what I did love about biotech, though, is I loved the technology side and the business side. And then in my early 20s, like many Australians and New Zealanders, I went backpacking the world. I ended up in London, ran out of money within 2 weeks, and obviously had to get a job. I started off working in the enterprise resource planning software space. ERP software is how a lot of companies, the software that companies run their businesses on. And what I saw, particularly in manufacturing and distribution businesses, people with lots of products and lots of customers, the sales managers and the salespeople were really struggling to maximize revenue from their existing customers. And the reason they were struggling is they didn't have access to the data they needed to do that. So it sounded like a problem we can solve. I flew back to Australia, convinced my brother to quit his job, which was easy until I told him I couldn't pay him. But so he quit his job, and then a few months later, we knocked out the very first release. I flew back to the UK, and it sold like hotcakes. We found a really good problem to solve, and we were solving it well. It then expanded beyond sales to all other areas of the business, but we wanted a sort of a global business, and I'd always had a desire to travel. So after getting enough money, building up enough cash in the UK, I came back to Australia. We set up the business here, and as soon as we had enough money, I flew to New York at the height of the global financial crisis, and we set up in the US. And then that sort of took us from 2001 to 2010, 11, and we've gone, wow, this business is actually, it's working. We're profitable purely on annual recurring revenue. We're a subscription business. And we thought, what next? So we tried to scale the business. And then what I realized, I started to see, was that we had 3 businesses, in 3 different countries, selling the same product to a similar customer base, but the cultures were a bit different. The leadership as we brought it in was a bit different, and the performance was a bit different in each of them. And I started to go, there's something going on here, and I could started to draw some parallels, but I thought maybe the first thing I should address is the leadership aspect. And so I was lucky enough to get a great coach. Hello, Helen, if you're out there somewhere. I got a great coach, and we did a 360 leadership diagnostic, and it just blew my head. I thought this was fantastic. And at that point I thought, well, I said to Helen, my coach at the time, I said, this is great for me, but what about the company? Isn't there a way you can measure the whole culture of the whole company? And that's where she introduced me to Karen Hailwood, and the journey continued on from there.
So maybe that's a great spot to bring Karen in. And Karen, we've got a few monikers coming in from the audience. So we've got constructive Karen, courageous Karen, keeping it real Karen. So we've got a bunch. I love them. Keep them coming.
Yeah, I like those. There's some good ones in there, some funny ones too.
Yeah, beautiful. Karen, the culture curator. Wow, there we go.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
That's a good one. So we'll tag you in the best one at the end of it.
Great.
But just to pick up the story maybe, so Myles brought you in to measure the culture of the organization. So talk us through, when did you do that? I know you used the OCI to measure it. So kind of what came up for you in that measure?
Yeah, thanks, Dom. 2016 was the time. Myles, I was introduced to Myles by Helen, and he was super curious about, tell me about this culture stuff. I think we've got a good culture. I'm pretty sure the culture's okay, but how do I know? So I said, well, let's do the OCI measure and we'll see. So it aligned with our low tech. This is what we came up with in 2016. So this was the first circumplex from the first measure. And so I said to him, well, you have got a pretty constructive culture. So he said, oh, great. I thought I had, but I wasn't sure. And he said, but how do we know what drives that? So how can we replicate that? So one of the things I did, as well as the OCI measure, was I interviewed 50 of the 90 people around the world and said, tell me about the culture. What is it that makes the culture here special? Why do you love it? Because clearly people did. And I also asked them, tell me how this compares to the best places you've ever worked. And 85% of the people said, well, actually, this is the best place I've ever worked. So that blew me away. I was kind of, okay, as an external consultant, I thought, this is interesting. So getting underneath that, there were probably 6 key themes that around the what are we doing right culturally. The first was that people said, I have enormous freedom and autonomy. I'm trusted to do what I need to do, when I need to do it, from where I need to do it. And they love that. And that really helped with innovation and collaboration and so on. The second thing is people said, I have enormous flexibility. And that included work-life balance and a really strong principle that we now call family first. The idea that you can kind of say, well, I won't be in till 10 because I've got to go to Susie's assembly and whatever. And that's very strong in the company. The third thing is that people said, I love the product and I love our customers. So a huge passion for the customers and trying to fix customer problems, find solutions, bring new things to the customer. The fourth thing was people said, I love my team. I absolutely love the people I work with. They're smart, they're capable, they're supportive, they share with me, they help me, everybody's really friendly, welcoming. So that was great. The fifth thing is people said, I really like my manager or my leader. They're open, they're accessible, and they're supportive. They may not have been highly trained or highly skilled. Perhaps it was their first people leadership role as a startup and a scaling up business, but they had all the kind of natural characteristics. And the last thing is that they said, we love the fact there's low ego here. Very little hierarchy, very little power stuff, almost no politics. So those were the big things, Dom, that came out. Obviously, there were some gaps too, but they were the real positives.
And I love that. And there's some comments coming through. It sounds brilliant already. But part of this journey is you took what was a great baseline and then went even further, right? So you developed it even further, and it was based on some of those insights, and you actually use some of the levers from the OEI measure that we have to kind of, take it to the next level. So what did you do, Karen? Where did you focus? And kind of what were some key actions? I know that's what people love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. I put together a people and culture strategy, the first one for the organization, which Myles and Phil and the rest of the board signed off and said, yeah, let's give it a go. It sounds good. So we took the gaps and created some of our first strategies. So there's probably 5 big levers that we pulled. The first was clarity. So one of the things people said to us, I'm not really very clear about what's what or what we're doing or the strategy or those sorts of things. So the first thing we did was said, let's get lots of clarity. And that was around the vision that Myles talked to earlier, the values. The values had always been around, but they really hadn't been articulated until 2015. So we began to really articulate them and use them all the time in our messaging. Myles did a huge amount of work around clarifying the strategy. Involved everybody globally and has continued to do that year on year since. So, the strategy got kind of written up and articulated, and then we turned that into line of business plans, team plans, and individual plans and goals, and began to put it all on our intranet site and make it very transparent and visible. And the intent behind that was we wanted everyone to have a clear line of sight from what I do to the strategy and how that was going to help our company and our customers. The second lever was organization design and job design. I have to have a good chuckle here, Dom, because when I first started, we had 90 people and 70 job titles.
Wow.
A lot of that autonomy and freedom was going on. There's a lot of creativity happening in the job title area. But in all seriousness, what that meant was people didn't really know necessarily which team I'm in or how that worked across the globe. So in 2017, we did quite a bit of work around simplifying our organization structure, just really bringing it down to the nub of what do we actually do and aligning it around the customer experience. And also Myles touched on the meaty, meaningful roles. We looked at every person and every job and said, does that person have a meaty, meaningful role aligned to the strategy? Can we see how they can contribute and how their performance will contribute? So we did a lot of realignment of people around that time, and that's been great. The third thing we did was the board made a significant investment in leadership development. And of course, for me as an executive coach, that's near and dear to my heart. And so, I've loved that work. And I'm a big believer, and I think Myles too is naturally a big believer, that the culture that you have is a result of the leadership that you have. And so that connection is very crystal clear for us. So we started to work with our leaders, not just from a skills development point of view, which we did, but also from a 360 and a coaching perspective, encouraging them to think about how they were showing up every day in the organization and how that impacts culture. So that's been a big thing. About 80% of our leaders have done at least one measure, and many are on to their second measure now. Myles has just done his. I had to say I do have profile envy. He has a beautiful circle. So the fourth thing that we did was we made a significant investment in training and development. We have heaps of really smart, capable people. And what we weren't doing previously was really investing in them after they joined us. And so we've expanded that enormously. That's been a big piece of work, a big lever for us. Book clubs and lunch and learns and professional training, sales capability lifting, 70-20-10 development planning for everybody annually, etc. And the last lever that we pulled was really around the recruitment one. We used to have a very kind of, yay, who do we know? Can they come and join us? Bring them in. It was fantastic, and we still use our networks, but it was probably a little bit on the loose side. So we've really professionalized our recruitment processes, added in an assessment platform, expanded the hiring teams to include a broad range of people to help us with choosing for cultural fit as well. The other element to that is we really moved to market remuneration and made sure we were starting to hire at market. When you're a bootstrap business, you don't have a lot of spare money, and it's very easy to underhire and to not pay at market in your early years. So we've really redressed that in the last 2 years.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Karen. And obviously that works because you moved from being an external consultant to internal. So
Yeah, I fell in love, Dom. I thought it was going to be a fling. It turned out to be a marriage. So.
I love it. And I love what you're saying in there around the clarity, right? If we're going to let people be their best and give them autonomy, then they've got to be clear on what we're here for, what we're trying to achieve, all that kind of stuff. I love it. Okay, so you put all those steps in place, which was pretty comprehensive, right? Lots of good stuff in there. And then you've remeasured in 2019. So what's been the difference? You know, what are you pleased about maybe between the two?
Yeah, we did measure again in 2019, and by then we were about 140 people or so. So we'd grown from 90. Today we're about 180. We had a really high response rate. And here you go, da-da, reveal. This was our 2019. So we were pretty chuffed with that. And I think the increase in humanistic encouraging really showed up heavily after all of that input into training and development and so on. So we were thrilled actually with the results. We felt like we'd put a lot of time and energy and work in, and the leaders put a lot of personal work in themselves and to really increasing the quality of the culture. So it's been great, and we'll obviously remeasure again, but that's where we were at that point.
Beautiful. So it sounds like it's been a fantastic journey. We've got more names coming in, Karen. So keep them coming. Courageous Karen. I saw a creative Karen. There you go. Crystal clear Karen. So that kind of aligns, I guess, with what you were saying earlier. So I love it. Keep it coming. And if you have any questions, send them in as well. So here's an interesting one we just got in. So Karen and Myles, would you mind to describe how the OCI aligns with the leadership styles of Myles's profile, and maybe more generally with the leaders in general at Phocas Software? Is there a correlation between the two, do you think?
Yeah, Myles, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, what I've seen clearly is that the CEO casts a very wide shadow, and inevitably the culture, whatever you talk about and say the culture is, it's the behaviors of the leaders that tend to be a reflection of the culture. I can probably get Karen to talk more to if the circumplex is a reflection of my values and culture, I guess.
Yeah, I can absolutely say that, when I met Myles, I could see he was a very constructive leader. He's always been very honest, very transparent, caring about people, and really interested in their growth, their learning and their development. So even without doing a measure, I was able to really see that he's very curious and very much a learner, always a learner, constantly asking people, what else do you know, and what do we know, and how can we continue to learn? So I didn't even need to do a measure really. Helen had just completed his 360 feedback, and it really supported that. But, so that link between an individual leader's results and the cultural results it's direct. There's no moving away from it. And we've certainly seen that in the leaders that we've measured internally. Those that have the much more constructive profile tend to have parts of the organization where things are just humming beautifully and people feel really supported and stretched as well. It's not all about niceness. Fun is not all about just having a good time. It's also about high performance. And so we definitely see that direct correlation between leadership results and our cultural outcomes.
And did you find, because I know you're growing a lot, right? And we've moved from just being Australia, we now have offices in the US and the UK and different leaders over there. And Myles, you touched on earlier, part of the start of this journey was seeing, maybe there's some different kinds of cultures coming up. So how has the investment in leadership and leadership development helped with that international kind of view and not being able to be everywhere all the time, Myles?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, to me, the most important thing, the focusing on the leadership, because inevitably, when we see a dip in performance or a change in performance somewhere, it almost inevitably comes to a cultural issue, and it almost always comes down to the leadership in that area. And it's not always that the leadership or the culture is wrong. It's just different to what works well at this organization. Or even sometimes where the performance is okay, it becomes harder to work with other people. And so I think that absolutely investing in the leadership is key. And then as we grow, that's going to be one of the next big challenges.
One of the other questions that came up was, we had someone saying they love the mentality and they wonder how they use your 3 words, fun, fulfilling, forever. What does that mean for your customers?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm really glad you asked, because I was going to talk about it earlier. I think what's great about it started off the fun, fulfilling, forever very much being an internal sort of our people at Phocas feel this, and it's a simple way. But what we've found over time is that fun, fulfilling, forever absolutely applies just as much as our customers as well. And it's almost become a bit of a mission in that way, in that, using the software should be fun. Working with Phocas is fun. It's fulfilling, it's professionally rewarding. It allows me to do my job better as a customer. And hopefully it is forever. Hopefully they use it forever, either as a company or they take it to other organizations. And I think what's interesting is it's moved further than that. We see that those same values apply to what we do with our partners. We see it applying equally to shareholders. And to be honest, it applies to the planet. Particularly when you have a value which is forever, we tend to be, whilst we care about the month, the quarter, the year, the 2 years, I'd love to think that Phocas is still around in 30 years, and we're going to need a planet that's going to be around then. So it starts to get you thinking in a far more sustainable way, and think about not just what am I doing for myself or my customers, but where does this fit in for other people and the planet as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for that, Myles. And Karen, we had another question come in, which is, what are the key skills you focus on in building with your leaders besides the 360 feedback?
Yeah, well, we actually hadn't done any skills development, Dom, to be fair, again, as a bootstrap business. And so last year and the year before when we started, it was the fundamentals. It was literally 101, what is managing a team about? From delegation through to listening, through to having those challenging conversations. Probably the highest area in our 2016 OCI in the reds and greens was avoidance. And that was about those difficult performance conversations. Myles won't mind me sharing, he was shocking at it. When I used to say to him, have you given them that feedback, Myles? And he'd go, well, no, not yet. I'm thinking about it, and then he became amazingly good at giving performance feedback. So, literally it was the basics, Dom, when we talk about skills development. The rest has been coaching. So helping people to say, well, how are you showing up at the moment? What are you noticing? What are you conscious of? When did you bungee off that platform where things were going well down into perfectionistic or down into critical, or, what did you experience? What did you notice was happening to the people around you when you did that? So we do quite a lot of work with people on noticing themselves. And really thinking about how do I winch myself back up onto the even keel again and sort of look up and out as a constructive leader and be my best self at work today. So that's probably the best way to describe it.
I love it. And I don't know if it's the basics, but it's the fundamentals, right? It's the behaviors that underpin everything we do. Yeah, absolutely. Final question for me, Myles, maybe you're best for this, is, you've had a great journey to date. So what does the future look like, and how do you maintain this culture going into the future?
Yeah, hopefully I can predict the future, Dom. But I think the way we're going, we're definitely growing, right? And I see that continuing. We're 200 now. There's no doubt we'll be 500, 1,000 employees in no time. And I think the things that worry me about that is bureaucracy and disruption. I suspect that maybe we've been a little bit smart, but probably very lucky. So as we continue to grow, I think the basics are in place. The values, I really believe, if you asked me this 5 years ago, I said, there's no way we can scale this. But I think with the fundamentals of the values, the vision, the mission, and the strategy that we continue to evolve, we should be okay at scaling the culture, so long as it doesn't turn into a bureaucracy, and so long as we can continue to innovate, not just in our product departments, but actually bring that across the whole organization. So that's our next journey, I think, is scaling the culture, but scaling it in a way that we can be creative and innovative as well.